Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Do you still remember the Hollywood legends whose names once lit up every marquee, yet whose final days were spent in silence, debt, and unthinkable poverty? In today's video, we will revisit 15 stars whose tragic endings reveal a side of fame that the cameras never captured. Some of them died with only a few cents in their bank account. Some were found alone in charity hospitals. Others had their homes seized, their savings wiped out, or their final breaths witnessed by no one at all. These are stories Hollywood prefers to forget, but today we bring them back to the light. Before we begin, tell me, which fallen star do you still remember? Leave your thoughts in the comments because your memory keeps their legacy alive. Number 1. Judy Garland, 1922 to 1969. Her final days unfolded like a heartbreaking coda to a life lived under blinding spotlights. On a quiet morning in London, Judy Garland was found lifeless in a rented home, her body weakened by years of financial stress, failed marriages, and overwhelming pressure. What shocked the world wasn't just her sudden death at 47, but the brutal truth revealed afterward. The woman who once carried the Wizard of Oz on her shoulders had died completely broke. Her home had been seized, her bank accounts drained, and mountains of tax debt followed her until her final breath. Even her closest friends admitted that Judy had been virtually penniless, relying on borrowed rooms and the kindness of others just to get by. Yet she wasn't just a tragic figure. Judy Garland was one of Hollywood's purest talents, a child prodigy whose voice defined an era. From her early breakthrough at MGM to her legendary concerts at Carnegie Hall, she created moments that still give audiences chills. But the fame that elevated her also consumed her, leaving her exhausted, overworked, and financially sabotaged by mismanagement and predatory contracts. Her death sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Fans mourned not only the loss of a star, but the cruelty of an industry that allowed one of its brightest lights to fade into poverty. Even today, many ask, how could Judy Garland, of all people, die this way? Number 2. Billie Holiday, 1915 to 1959. Her final moments were as haunting as the song she poured her soul into. Billie Holiday took her last breath in a New York hospital room, surrounded not by luxury or comfort, but by poverty, police guards, and a lifetime of wounds that never healed. When nurses checked her belongings, they found only 70 cents in her bank account. Even the small savings she once had were seized by authorities while she lay dying. The woman who sang Strange Fruit with earth-shattering pain left this world with nothing but her voice echoing through history. Billie had risen from an abusive childhood to become one of the greatest jazz vocalists the world had ever heard. Her phrasing was unmatched, her delivery a blend of sorrow and defiance that no one could imitate. She sold out clubs, influenced generations, and carried American music into a new era. Yet behind the applause was a life battered by addiction, racism, and relentless exploitation. She was arrested in her hospital bed, denied treatment, and stripped of dignity in her final days. Her death at 44 felt less like the end of a life and more like the closing of a wound America refused to confront. Fans were devastated. Musicians across the world cried out that the government had failed her. Critics called her passing a national shame, and even now, new generations discover her story with disbelief. How could a voice that changed music forever die in such isolation and poverty? Number 3. Bela Lugosi, 1882 to 1956. When Bela Lugosi died, the world learned a truth more chilling than any vampire tale he ever brought to life. The man who embodied Dracula, whose piercing stare and elegant menace defined an entire genre, spent his final years in heartbreaking poverty. On the evening he passed away in a modest Los Angeles apartment, he owned little more than a few worn suits and the memories of a stardom long vanished. Addiction had devoured his health, and the film roles that once came easily had dried up. His obituary revealed a phrase that stunned fans everywhere. Bela Lugosi had died penniless. Yet in the golden age of horror, he was royalty. His portrayal of Count Dracula in 1931 became an immortal blueprint for every vampire film that followed. His stage presence, his hypnotic voice, and his eerie charisma made him one of Universal's greatest icons. But Hollywood can be cruel to those it crowns. After studios typecast him, opportunities faded. Financial exploitation, personal struggles, and his battle with morphine dependency pushed him into obscurity. He sought rehabilitation near the end, bravely admitting his addiction, but the comeback he hoped for never arrived. News of his death shook the film community. Fellow actors mourned not just the loss of a legend, but the tragedy of a pioneer abandoned by the industry he helped build. Fans were heartbroken to learn he had been buried in his Dracula cape, a tender gesture honoring the role that shaped his destiny. Number 4. Mickey Rooney, 1920 to 2014. His final years were a cruel twist for a man once hailed as one of Hollywood's brightest prodigies. When Mickey Rooney died at 93, the world discovered that the legendary actor, once the top box office star in America, had left behind almost nothing. Despite 8 marriages, hundreds of film credits, and a career that spanned more than 8 decades, Rooney died with very little money left, as The Guardian reported. The truth was devastating. His finances had been drained by mismanagement, exploitation, and alleged abuse from those closest to him. He spent his last years relying on a modest SAG pension and the kindness of friends who helped protect him from further financial harm. Yet, Mickey Rooney had been unstoppable in his prime. From the Andy Hardy films to Boys Town and National Velvet, he was the embodiment of the energetic all-American star. His talent was undeniable. He could sing, dance, act, and command the screen with effortless charm. He appeared in more than 300 films and earned multiple Oscar nominations, cementing his place in the history of American cinema. But fame does not guarantee security. Behind closed doors, lawsuits, family conflicts, and financial betrayal stripped him of nearly everything he had worked for. When he passed away, the news stunned Hollywood. To think that a man who once earned millions had died with less than $20,000 was a painful reminder of how vulnerable even the most iconic stars can be. His funeral was modest, and many fans expressed outrage that such a beloved figure had been allowed to fall into poverty. When he passed away, the news stunned Hollywood. To think that a man who once earned millions had died with less than $20,000 was a painful reminder of how vulnerable even the most iconic stars can be. His funeral was modest, and many fans expressed outrage that such a beloved figure had been allowed to fall into poverty. Number 5. Joe Louis, 1914 to 1981. The final chapter of Joe Louis's life was as heartbreaking as it was shocking. When the legendary heavyweight champion died in Las Vegas, the public learned that the man once celebrated as the Brown Bomber had spent his last years fighting not opponents, but overwhelming debt and devastating poverty. The Internal Revenue Service had pursued him for more than $1 million in back taxes, a burden that crushed his finances long after he stepped out of the ring. In the end, one of the greatest athletes in American history was working as a greeter at Caesar's Palace, welcoming tourists instead of enjoying the retirement a champion deserves. History.com summarized his final state in 3 brutal words: he died penniless. But before tragedy claimed him, Joe Louis was a titan. His knockout power electrified stadiums, and his rivalry with Max Schmeling became one of the most iconic moments in sports history. He reigned as heavyweight champion for nearly 12 years, a record that remains untouched. For millions of Americans during the Great Depression and the war years, Louis was more than an athlete. He was a hero, a symbol of courage, pride, and unity. Yet, fame couldn't shield him from mismanagement, ruthless tax policies, and the pressures of supporting countless friends, family members, and charities. When news broke that he had died nearly broke, fans and fellow athletes were stunned. How could a national treasure, a man who once earned millions and brought glory to his country, be abandoned in his final years? Even today, conversations about Lewis often turn into debates about how America failed one of its greatest champions. Number 6. Gary Coleman, 1968 to 2010. His final years were a harsh reminder that childhood fame can be both a blessing and a curse. When Gary Coleman died at 42, the world was stunned to learn that the beloved star of Different Strokes, one of the most recognizable faces of American television, had spent his last days nearly penniless. His entire fortune, once worth millions, had vanished long before his death. Court documents revealed that his parents and former manager had misappropriated much of his earnings, forcing Coleman to sue his own family. Though he won the case, the victory came far too late. By 1999, he had filed for bankruptcy, and in the years that followed, he worked security jobs and odd gigs just to survive. Behind that bright television smile was a life marked by exhaustion, exploitation, and chronic medical problems. Coleman faced lifelong health challenges stemming from congenital kidney issues, and the surgeries and treatments drained him emotionally and financially. As the roles dried up, he struggled to find steady work, and the public who once adored him had little idea of how dire his situation had become. His final moments came after a fall in his Utah home, a tragic and lonely ending for a man who once brought so much joy to millions. News of his death struck fans with a strange mix of grief and disbelief. Many found it unthinkable that the child star who had captured America's heart could end up struggling to pay rent and fighting for dignity in his last years. Commentators called his downfall one of Hollywood's most painful cautionary tales. Number 7. Corey Haim, 1971 to 2010. Corey Haim's final chapter played out like a tragic echo of the fame he once enjoyed. When he died at just 38, reports revealed that the former teen idol, one of the brightest stars of the 1980s, had been living in severe financial distress. He owed money on rent, struggled with medical bills, and had filed for bankruptcy years earlier. ABC News delivered the stark truth that shocked fans everywhere. He died broke. It was a devastating ending for a man who once had Hollywood at his feet. In his youth, Corey Haim was electric on screen. Films like The Lost Boys, Lucas, and Silver Bullet made him a household name, and audiences adored his charm, innocence, and raw emotional presence. But while the cameras captured his rise, they never showed the battles he was losing behind closed doors. Haim struggled for decades with addiction, relapse, and the pressures of early fame. He attempted multiple comebacks, each time promising a fresh start, yet each time falling victim to the same demons that had haunted him for years. When he passed away, the reaction was immediate and emotional. Fans mourned the loss of a star who never got the redemption arc he deserved. Fellow actors who had grown up with him spoke of a sweet soul trapped in a storm he couldn't escape. The tragedy was magnified by the knowledge that Haim had been trying to rebuild his life before his sudden death, hoping for one last chance to return to the screen he loved. Number 8. Veronica Lake, 1922 to 1973. Her final days bore no resemblance to the glamorous image that once enchanted the world. When Veronica Lake died in a small Vermont hospital, the public learned that the dazzling noir icon who inspired hairstyles, fashion trends, and wartime posters had spent her last years nearly destitute. Alcoholism had stripped away her health, her career, and her fortune. By the end of her life, she was working anonymously as a waitress in a local bar just to afford food and shelter. Her death in a charity hospital, far from the limelight she once commanded, stunned fans who remembered her as the femme fatale of Hollywood's golden age. But Veronica Lake had been extraordinary. With her icy gaze and unforgettable peekaboo hairstyle, she became one of the defining faces of 1940s cinema. Films like Sullivan's Travels, This Gun for Hire, and The Blue Dahlia turned her into a star whose beauty and cool allure were unmatched. Yet fame came with a dark shadow. Turbulent marriages, studio conflicts, and a growing dependence on alcohol derailed her career. Roles disappeared, money vanished. Even when she tried staging comebacks, Hollywood had already moved on. When the truth about her final years became public, the reaction was heartbreaking. Reporters described her fall as one of Hollywood's cruelest tragedies. Fans expressed disbelief that a woman who had once graced every magazine cover could die alone with no fortune and barely any recognition left. Even today, her name sparks conversations about the cost of beauty, fame, and the unforgiving nature of the entertainment industry. Number 9. Dorothy Dandridge, 1922 to 1965. Her final hours were a heartbreaking contrast to the historic breakthrough she once represented. When Dorothy Dandridge was found dead in her small West Hollywood apartment, the world learned that the first African-American woman ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress had died with only a few $100s to her name. Years of financial mismanagement, failed investments, and relentless discrimination had pushed her into bankruptcy. The woman who once captivated Hollywood in Carmen Jones spent her last days struggling to pay rent and fighting the sense that the very industry she helped transform had abandoned her. Yet Dorothy Dandridge was a pioneer in every sense. Her beauty, poise, and powerful presence on screen broke racial barriers at a time when opportunities for Black actresses were painfully limited. She electrified audiences with her performances, not just as an actress, but also as a singer who commanded the stage with elegance and fire. But while her talent soared, her personal life crumbled. She lost custody battles, endured toxic relationships, and trusted financial advisors who squandered her money. Hollywood, obsessed with typecasting and prejudice, offered her fewer and fewer roles, leaving her career and her finances to collapse. The news of her death sent a wave of sorrow across the entertainment world. Many called her passing one of Hollywood's most tragic losses, not only because she died young at 42, but because she died unrecognized and unprotected. Fans today still debate what might have been if Dorothy had been given the support, respect, and opportunities she deserved. Number 10. Dana Plato, 1964 to 1999. Her final days unfolded inside a cramped mobile home, a far cry from the television fame she once enjoyed. When Dana Plato died at just 34, the public was stunned to learn how desperately she had been struggling. The former Diff'rent Strokes star had declared bankruptcy in 1992, endured years of addiction, and even attempted to rob a small video store out of sheer financial desperation. By the time of her death, she was living day to day, renting a tiny mobile home and fighting a losing battle against the emotional storms that followed her everywhere. Her passing was ruled an overdose, and the world realized just how far she had fallen from the bright spotlight of her youth. And yet, Dana Plato had once been America's sweetheart. With her warm smile, expressive eyes, and natural charm, she helped define one of the most beloved sitcoms of the late 1970s and early 1980s. But behind the scenes, Hollywood had not been kind. Early fame brought pressure she wasn't prepared to handle. Roles dried up, opportunities evaporated, and the financial security she thought she had never truly existed. She tried dozens of times to rebuild her life, appearing on talk shows, seeking help, pleading for a second chance. But each attempt was overshadowed by the weight of her past and the limited support offered by an industry that had long moved on. When news of her tragic end broke, fans were both heartbroken and furious. Commentators called her story a devastating example of how Hollywood consumes its young. Many pointed out that she had cried for help repeatedly, only for those pleas to be forgotten in the noise of the media frenzy around her troubles. To make the tragedy even deeper, her son Tyler later died by suicide, leading many to reflect on the generational impact of the pain she carried. Number 11. Frances Farmer, 1913 to 1970. Her final years were a quiet heartbreak, lived far from the bright lights that once promised her the world. When Frances Farmer died in a modest apartment in Indianapolis, the public slowly learned the truth. One of Hollywood's most gifted actresses, once hailed as a rising star of the 1930s, had spent her last decade in near poverty. She worked low-wage jobs, including as a hotel receptionist, just to keep herself afloat. Her savings had been swallowed by years of instability, mental health struggles, and an industry that turned its back on her long before she could recover. She died without wealth, without fame, and without the recognition she had once been destined for. But Frances Farmer had been a magnetic force on screen. Her performances in films like Come and Get It and Son of Fury showed a rare intensity, raw, intelligent, and fearlessly emotional. She was the kind of actress who didn't just play a role, she inhabited it. Yet Hollywood didn't know how to handle a woman as outspoken and uncompromising as she was. Tension with studios, public scrutiny, and a series of institutionalizations, many of them controversial and still debated today, shattered her career. By the time she was released and tried to rebuild her life, her opportunities were gone and the damage had already been done. When news of her death finally circulated, the reaction was somber. Critics and biographers called her story one of Hollywood's forgotten tragedies. Fans who rediscovered her work decades later expressed outrage at how she had been treated, wondering how such an extraordinary talent could be allowed to fade into obscurity and hardship. Even today, Frances Farmer remains a haunting reminder of how the industry can break those who refuse to conform. Number 12. Susan Cabot, 1927 to 1986. The final years of Susan Cabot's life were defined by isolation, financial decline, and a heartbreaking deterioration of her mental health. When she died in her small, deteriorating Los Angeles home, the public learned that the once rising B-movie star had been living in near poverty. Her income had dwindled to almost nothing. Her house, once a symbol of hope and ambition, had become a shadow of its former self, cluttered, dim, and neglected. Reports from the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times obituary described her final state as almost assetless, a chilling contrast to the glamorous promise of her early Hollywood years. Her tragic death, caused during a violent episode involving her disturbed son, only deepened the sorrow surrounding her final moments. Yet Susan Cabot had once been a captivating presence on screen. Known for films like The Wasp Woman and Machine Gun Kelly, she possessed a vulnerability and intensity that set her apart from other B-movie actresses of the 1950s. Off-screen, she impressed directors with her dedication and emotional depth. But behind her growing fame was a life marked by trauma. Childhood abuse, unstable relationships, and years of psychological struggle slowly chipped away at her stability. By the late 1970s, opportunities had vanished entirely, leaving her financially trapped and emotionally overwhelmed. When the circumstances of her death became public, the reaction was a mixture of grief and disbelief. Fans could not understand how a woman once poised for stardom could end up living alone, forgotten, and surrounded by financial ruin. Commentators called her life a cautionary tale of Hollywood's darkest shadows, a story of a woman who had never truly escaped the pain she carried from childhood into adulthood. Number 13. Wally Cox, 1924 to 1973. When Wally Cox died suddenly in his Hollywood home, fans were startled, not only by the unexpected nature of his passing, but by the sobering truth that followed. Despite a long career in television and voice acting, Cox spent his final years with limited financial means. The New York Times and Los Angeles Times both reported that he had been struggling quietly, with declining health and a lack of substantial acting work for nearly a decade. Hollywood had largely forgotten him, and his finances reflected that reality. For a man who once charmed America with his gentle wit and soft-spoken humor, he died with far fewer resources than anyone expected. But in his prime, Wally Cox was a familiar face in living rooms across the nation. He starred in Mr. Peepers, a beloved early television sitcom that captured the hearts of viewers in the 1950s. His subtle comedic timing and endearing personality made him stand out in an era filled with loud, flashy performers. Later, a new generation grew to love him as the voice of Underdog, the animated canine hero who became a cultural icon. Cox had a rare ability to be both warm and quietly profound, a trait that resonated with audiences long after the shows ended. Yet his career never fully recovered from the shifts in Hollywood as the decades advanced. Roles became scarce. He battled health problems, including heart issues, and the combination of dwindling opportunities and medical expenses strained his finances heavily. When he died at 48, Hollywood mourned a man who had slipped through the cracks of an industry that can be brutally indifferent to its past stars.
Number 14. Olive Borden, 1906 to 1947. Her final days bore almost no resemblance to the breathtaking rise she once experienced. When Olive Borden died at only 41 in a charity hospital in Los Angeles, the truth stunned anyone who remembered her as one of the most dazzling stars of the silent film era. She had earned as much as $1,500 a week, an enormous sum in the 1920s. Yet by the end of her life, her fortune had vanished entirely. Alcohol dependency, failed relationships, family conflicts, and the abrupt collapse of silent cinema all contributed to her downfall. She died with nothing, working as a maid and later as a volunteer in a church in exchange for shelter and food. What had once been glamour dissolved into poverty, illness, and heartbreaking silence. But Olive Borden had once been extraordinary. Nicknamed the Joy Girl, she captivated audiences with her expressive face, magnetic charm, and an effortless ability to command the screen without a single spoken word. She starred in hits like Fig Leaves and Three Bad Men, and studios once battled for the chance to feature her. She was elegant, fiercely ambitious, and widely considered one of the most beautiful women of her generation. Yet when talking pictures arrived, Borden refused to lower her salary demands. Hollywood changed overnight, and she was left behind. The news of her death decades later struck film historians and fans with deep sorrow. Many described her as a symbol of Hollywood's earliest, harshest lessons, that fame can vanish instantly, that beauty is fragile, and that even the brightest stars can fall hardest. People looking back on her legacy now often wonder how a woman once adored by millions could have been allowed to die in obscurity and destitution. Do you think the shift to talking pictures unfairly erased talents like Olive Borden, who thrived in silent cinema? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Number 15. Sammy Davis Jr., 1925 to 1990. When Sammy Davis Jr. died in 1990, the public was stunned to discover that one of the most electrifying entertainers in American history had spent his final years drowning in overwhelming debt. Despite decades of sold-out performances, hit records, film roles, and the kind of fame few performers ever achieve, Davis owed the International Revenue Service more than $7 million at the time of his death. His estate was so burdened by tax debt and unpaid expenses that nearly every asset he had, jewelry, property, even personal memorabilia, was seized or liquidated. The man who once embodied effortless cool, who sang, danced, joked, and dazzled audiences worldwide, left this world nearly penniless. Yet before tragedy seized him, Sammy Davis Jr. was a phenomenon. As a member of the legendary Rat Pack, he shared the stage with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, lighting up Las Vegas with his charisma. He broke racial barriers in the 1950s and 1960s, fought for civil rights, and commanded every stage with unmatched versatility. He could sing with the range of a jazz crooner, dance with the precision of a Broadway star, and act with genuine emotional depth. But fame brought pressure, lavish spending, and a relentless schedule. Years of financial mismanagement, combined with medical bills from his battle with throat cancer, left him overwhelmed by debt he could never repay. When the magnitude of his financial collapse became public, fans were heartbroken. Many could not understand how a performer of his stature, one of the most hard-working, beloved, and influential entertainers of the 20th century, could be allowed to reach the end of his life in such desperate financial condition. Hollywood mourned him deeply, but the sorrow carried an uncomfortable truth.
Even icons are not immune to the devastating consequences of mismanagement and exploitation. Do you believe Sammy Davis Jr. deserved better financial protection considering his contributions to American entertainment and civil rights? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look back on these 15 remarkable stars, we're reminded that fame is never a guarantee of security, comfort, or a peaceful ending. These actors and entertainers once filled theaters, shaped generations, and gave the world performances that still echo today. Yet, behind the applause and bright lights, many faced battles they could not win. Financial betrayal, addiction, illness, discrimination, and an industry that can lift people to impossible heights only to abandon them without warning. Their final days may have been marked by poverty, but their legacies are priceless. They may be gone, but their impact lives on in every film reel, every song, and every memory they left behind. Do you remember any other stars whose final days were marked by tragedy or hardship? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can honor them together. And if you would like more Hollywood stories that reveal the truth behind the glamour, don't forget to subscribe to Gone But Iconic.